Hi, you're watching Reddit Confessions. This isn't about cheating, yet. It's about something worse. Something quieter. Something that plants itself inside you and grows until you barely recognize your own reflection. It started with a bouquet. No, not a romantic one. Not a, sorry I messed up, one. It wasn't even an anniversary or anything cliché like that. It was a Tuesday. A gray, boring Tuesday when everything in our house felt beige. Empty. I bought the flowers just to see if anything could break the silence that had become normal. I came home, holding the bouquet like it was radioactive. And yeah, maybe I overthought it. Maybe I hesitated for a second too long at the door. But when I walked in, I knew instantly I was about to regret everything. She wasn't alone. Her two friends were there, mid-laugh, mid-whine, mid-gossip. And there I was, holding a bunch of vibrant, imperfect wildflowers in my stupid hand like I was the punchline to a joke no one had told yet. She looked at me. Then at the bouquet. Then at her friends. "Oh no," she said, already smirking. "Not another one of those gestures." Her friend giggled. "Curtis still thinks flowers fix a personality," she added, lifting her glass. "It's cute. In a sad way." And they laughed. All three of them. Loud enough to make sure I heard it. And I did. Every word. Every cruel vowel. I didn't say a thing. I just stood there, staring at the flowers, wondering why I ever thought this would be different. Then I turned. Without thinking. I walked over to her friend, the one who hadn't laughed. The one who looked like she didn't belong in the joke. And I handed her the bouquet. She blinked. "Wait, are you serious?" she asked. I nodded. "You didn't laugh." She took them. "And I swear to you," she lit up. Her cheeks flushed. Her eyes softened. She looked like someone who hadn't been given flowers in years. Maybe ever. That's when the room shifted. My wife's smile disappeared. Entirely. Her wine glass didn't move. Her hands stiffened. Her jaw clenched in a way I'd never noticed before. No one said anything for the next 30 seconds. But everything changed. And if you think that was the awkward part, oh no. That was just the fuse. The next morning started like most others, silent. She didn't mention the flowers. Didn't bring up her friend lighting up like she'd just won the lottery. In fact, Camille acted like the entire incident had been erased. Just a flat, "good morning," and a quick retreat into her phone. And I would have let it go. Honestly. I'm the kind of guy who avoids confrontation like it's fire. But at 11:13 a.m., while sitting in the car during my break, my phone buzzed with a text that didn't feel normal. It was from an unknown number. No words. Just an image. A screenshot. I opened it, confused, and immediately felt like someone poured cold water down my spine. It was from a group chat. I don't know who leaked it, maybe one of the other friends, maybe a mistake. But there it was. Camille's messages, from the night before, right after I'd gone to bed. Camille, "So Curtis gave Willow the flowers like he was trying to be some tragic rom-com husband." Kendra, "OMG stop, did she actually take them?" Camille, "She did. Like it was a proposal or something." I was this close to gagging. Camille, "If he thinks that's gonna guilt me into playing house again, he's dumber than I thought." I stared at the screen for a full minute, rereading each line like they'd rearrange themselves if I gave them enough time. They didn't. It just got heavier. And then, at the bottom of the screenshot, one last message I almost missed. "Willow, not gonna lie, they were beautiful. Maybe someone should actually appreciate him for once." That line. That line hit harder than all the mockery. Because it felt real. And it didn't come from pity. It came from clarity. It was the first time in years I felt, visible. I didn't text back. I didn't forward it. I just sat in my car, hands shaking, heart crawling up my throat, wondering how many more years I'd allowed myself to be the background noise in my own marriage. That night, things got weirder. Camille was suddenly performative. She put on music while cooking dinner, something upbeat, fake cheerful. She poured me a glass of wine without asking. She even made a comment about my shirt. "You still have that one. You used to look cute in it." Used to. And then she asked, "So, are you gonna apologize?" I blinked. Apologize? For making things weird last night. You embarrassed me in front of my friends. I don't know what broke inside me at that exact second. But I laughed. I actually laughed. Not loudly. Not out of sarcasm. Just, hollow. Tired. Laughing at the absurdity of it all. She didn't find it funny. "You're seriously laughing right now?" I set the wine down. "No, Camille. I'm just realizing I've been auditioning for the role of husband in a show you stopped watching years ago." She looked stunned for half a beat, like maybe something cracked her surface, but then her eyes narrowed and she muttered, "Dramatic, as always." I didn't respond. Not because I was biting my tongue, but because I was finally done handing her the last word wrapped in velvet. That night, I couldn't sleep. Not because of what she said, but because of what Willow said. Maybe someone should actually appreciate him for once. I didn't want to jump to conclusions. I didn't want to create fantasies. But deep down, something told me that Willow's smile wasn't just about the flowers. And Camille's reaction wasn't just about embarrassment. Something was brewing. And I wasn't sure if I was about to get closure, or chaos. I hadn't seen Willow since that night with the flowers. She hadn't reached out. No follow-up message. No reaction to what I might have read. It was as if she had vanished into the shadows of Camille's inner circle again. And maybe that would have been the end of it, if I hadn't run into her in the most unexpected place, the grocery store parking lot. I almost didn't recognize her at first. She wasn't dressed like the version of herself I remembered from Camille's wine nights, heels, gloss, perfect posture. This Willow was in leggings, an oversized hoodie, hair in a messy bun. Real. Human. And standing beside her car with a full grocery bag split open at her feet. I parked without thinking and jogged over. "Need help?" She looked up and actually smiled. Not the awkward kind. Not forced. Just, grateful. "I didn't peg you for a rescue type, Curtis." I helped her scoop up apples and a runaway cereal box. We loaded her trunk in silence until she finally said, "So. I'm guessing you saw the group chat." I paused. "Yeah." She bit her lip. "I didn't mean for you to see that. I didn't send it." "I figured," I muttered. "But that last line. Was that real? Or just you playing peacekeeper?" Willow shut the trunk and leaned against it, arms folded, eyes suddenly sharp. "Real. Too real, actually." I waited, but she didn't say anything else. So I asked the question that had been strangling me since the night with the bouquet. "What does Camille say about me when I'm not around?" Willow looked like she didn't want to answer. But then her shoulders slumped and she sighed, like someone giving up on holding the dam. "She calls you the background guy. Says you're harmless. Predictable. A little sad but comfortable. She told Kendra once that being married to you is like living in a house with beige walls, nothing wrong with it, just, nothing exciting either." I don't know what I expected. Maybe something petty. Maybe some vague critique. But background guy. Beige walls. That one stung deeper than any insult ever could. I nodded slowly, trying to swallow it. "Cool." She touched my arm lightly. "That's not who you are." I laughed, not because it was funny, but because it sounded ridiculous. You barely know me. I know enough, she said, and her voice softened. I know you brought her wildflowers when you could have just shut down. I know you looked humiliated and still didn't say anything cruel. I know you've been fighting for a marriage alone while she turns it into a stage play. I looked at her, trying to read between the words, and that's when she dropped the part that turned everything upside down. She's been talking to someone, Willow said. Not just a friend. I overheard her on the phone once when she thought I was asleep at her place. Guy named Jonah. She was different. Giddy. Like the Camille from 10 years ago. I stared at her, stunned. Are you sure? Willow nodded. I wasn't going to say anything. But after how she treated you that night, and how she looked after I accepted those flowers. She's not scared of hurting you, Curtis. She's scared of being seen as the one who's boring. I didn't know what to say. The woman I had been defending, even to myself, might not just be cold. She might actually be lying. Cheating, even. Or maybe it was worse, maybe I had become so invisible to her that even betrayal didn't feel like a betrayal to her anymore, just a casual inevitability. Willow saw the look on my face and added, you didn't deserve to find out this way. But you needed to. I nodded. I couldn't even thank her. That night, I didn't sleep. I didn't confront Camille. Not yet. I just lay there in the dark, listening to her breathing beside me, steady, unbothered, peaceful. And I realized I had no idea who she was anymore. But soon, I was going to find out. For 2 nights, I rehearsed 100 ways to start the conversation. Sometimes it began with a calm question, sometimes with a sarcastic jab. A few versions ended with me storming out. One ended with me crying. None of them felt right. Because the truth was, I didn't want to catch her, I wanted her to prove everyone wrong. I wanted her to laugh at the idea of Jonah, call it ridiculous, hug me tightly, and maybe, just maybe, cry and say she missed us. But deep down, I already knew she wouldn't. It was Thursday night when I finally broke. I had come home from work early, something I never do, and sat in the driveway for 22 minutes, just staring at the front door like it was the gate to a firing squad. She was on the couch when I walked in, legs tucked under her, laptop open, some home renovation show playing in the background. She looked up, surprised but not concerned. You're home early, she said. I nodded. Yeah. We had a power outage at the site. She shrugged and went back to whatever she was typing. I dropped my bag, stood still for a moment, then asked it. Who's Jonah? It was instant. The way her fingers froze above the keyboard. The tiny flicker of something behind her eyes. Not fear. Not guilt. Calculation. Jonah, she repeated, slowly, like I'd just asked her who built the pyramids. I didn't answer. I waited. She exhaled. Why are you asking me that? Because someone told me they heard you talking to him. And it wasn't a work call. For a moment, she just stared. And I knew that was the moment. The space between her next words would determine everything. She could have denied it, lied, cried, screamed, anything. But instead, she said the one thing I wasn't ready for. Okay, and? That was it. No panic. No explanations. Just those 2 words, like I'd asked her what time the mail comes. I blinked. So you're not even going to deny it? She shut the laptop gently, set it aside, and finally looked at me, really looked at me, with this strange mix of pity and exhaustion. Curtis, do you really want to go down this road? My chest tightened. I didn't choose this road. I just realized I've been walking it alone. She stood up, arms crossed. Look, nothing's happened. Yet. But yeah, I talk to him. He listens. He sees me. I laughed bitterly. Sees you? I bought you flowers and you mocked me in front of your friends. Exactly, she snapped, her voice rising. You think flowers are some magical fix. You never see what's really missing. You just patch holes with cheap gestures and pretend we're okay. That hit me like a punch in the gut. Not because she was wrong, but because for the first time, I realized she'd been building a case against me for years, and I was just now seeing the sentencing. So this is my fault? I asked, barely above a whisper. She paused. I don't know. Maybe it's just, neither of us is happy, Curtis. Maybe it's time we admit that. I stood there, waiting for something, anything, to break the numbness crawling through me. A tear. An apology. Even a scream. But there was nothing. Just two people who once shared everything now reduced to stiff words in a quiet room. I left. Not forever, not yet. I just needed air. I drove aimlessly for an hour, parked in an empty church lot and stared out the windshield until my phone buzzed. It was Willow. Willow, I don't know what happened, but if you need someone to talk to, I'm around. No judgment. Just ears. I didn't reply. Not yet. But I stared at that message for a long time, wondering how someone on the outside could sound more like home than the person sleeping next to me for over a decade. And for the first time, I stopped wondering what came next with Camille. I started wondering what came next without her. I didn't go home that night. Not out of defiance or anger. I just couldn't bring myself to walk through that door again, not after what she said. Not after, nothing's happened yet, followed by that calm, surgical, and, as if she'd already mentally erased me from her world. I ended up booking a cheap room at a motor lodge off Route 11, the kind where the front desk guy doesn't ask questions and the water pressure reminds you how disposable you are. I barely slept. The next morning, I called in sick, which I'd only done twice in 10 years. Then I sat in my car for 20 minutes and finally responded to Willow. I could really use someone to talk to. If you're serious. She responded within seconds. Willow, I'm free at noon. Somewhere quiet. We met at a tiny cafe on the edge of town, the kind with chipped mugs and faded menus, but with booths far enough apart that no one overhears anything. She was already there when I arrived, sitting in the corner, no makeup, hoodie again, hair tied up like she hadn't tried, and yet, somehow, she looked more human than anyone I'd spoken to in months. I sat down. No small talk. Just silence and 2 steaming coffees between us. Finally, she asked, "Did you confront her?" I nodded. Yeah. And she didn't deny it. She just confirmed it without actually saying the words. Willow bit her lip and looked down at her cup. That sounds like Camille. I leaned in a little. Why do you say that like it's a pattern? She hesitated. I could tell she was weighing something in her head, a decision to either open the floodgates or stay loyal to a friend who clearly didn't deserve it. I'm not trying to stir things up, she said carefully, but Camille's done this before. I froze. What do you mean? Willow took a long breath and said something I never expected to hear. Back in 2019, there was someone else. A guy named Micah. I don't know if it got physical, I really don't, but I know she was emotionally checked out for months. She'd complain about you, tell us she was bored of being invisible, and then Micah came along and suddenly she was glowing again. But she kept it buried. Said she'd never leave you because she liked the stability. That word again. Stability. The prison she had made out of me. She called me the beige wall, I muttered. Willow looked genuinely hurt. That's not who you are. I shook my head. No, that's just who she made me feel like. And then, for a second, I let my walls drop. I told Willow everything, not just about Jonah, or the flowers, or the text, or the emptiness. I told her about the way Camille started sighing every time I entered a room. How she'd move away when I reached for her hand in public. How I'd started timing my footsteps in the house so I wouldn't irritate her with my presence. How I learned to breathe smaller. Willow listened. And when I finally stopped talking, she didn't offer advice. She didn't try to fix anything. She just said, "I wish someone had ever loved me like that." The silence that followed was loaded, not romantic, not flirtatious. Just, real. Two broken people sitting in a booth, trying to remember who they were before someone convinced them they were forgettable. Then, she reached into her bag and pulled out her phone. "I wasn't going to show you this," she said. "But you should see it." She tapped the screen, scrolled a bit, then turned the phone toward me. It was a video. Camille. Laughing. Sitting on a patio. Wine glass in hand. With a man I didn't recognize. She leaned in, touched his arm, whispered something in his ear. He kissed her. Not just a peck. Not hesitant. Not, "Oops, we crossed a line." It was deep. Familiar. Intimate. The timestamp was from 2 weeks ago. My stomach dropped so fast I felt physically sick. I blinked, but the screen didn't change. My wife. In someone else's arms. While I was probably cooking her dinner and folding her laundry. I looked up at Willow. "Why didn't you show me this earlier?" She looked down. "Because I didn't want to be the reason your marriage fell apart." But then I realized, your marriage had already been falling. I'm just the one pulling back the curtain. I nodded slowly, trying to breathe past the rage, the humiliation, the sadness I had been too afraid to name. "You okay?" she asked gently. "No," I said. "But I think that's finally a good thing. Because for once, I wasn't making excuses. I was finally seeing the truth. I didn't storm home. I didn't burst through the front door with the phone in my hand, waving the video like some courtroom exhibit. There was no dramatic confrontation, no yelling, no shattering of wine glasses or suitcases dragged across the hardwood floor. I sat in my car. For 45 minutes. Watching the same 10-second clip of Camille kissing another man over and over until the battery on my phone dropped into the red and the bile in my throat threatened to rise again. I wasn't crying. Not exactly. It was worse than that. I was just, still. Like something had died inside me and my body hadn't caught up to the news yet. When I finally did go in, the house was quiet. Too quiet. I expected the usual, Camille on her laptop, a show humming in the background, maybe a half-finished glass of wine on the counter. But instead, nothing. No lights. No music. Just silence and the faintest smell of her perfume still lingering in the hallway. I walked through the kitchen and into the living room. Empty. Then I noticed something new. On the dining table, a small black folder. Plain. Closed. Centered like a gift. I stared at it for a long time before I touched it. Inside were papers. Legal documents. Divorce papers. My name, her name, and the date already filled out. The lawyer's contact info in the top corner. Her signature at the bottom. Clean. Elegant. Unbothered. And taped to the inside of the folder, a sticky note in her handwriting. I figured this would be easier than pretending. That was it. No explanation. No apology. Just confirmation that whatever I had feared wasn't a surprise to her. It was planned. That's when the panic hit. Not over the divorce, I think I'd already mourned the relationship before this. But over how calculated it all felt. How cold. Like she'd been moving chess pieces behind my back for months, maybe years. Like I'd been losing a game I didn't even know I was playing. I rushed upstairs. Her closet was half empty. The drawer where she kept her passport and spare cards. Open. The jewelry box. Missing her heirloom necklace, the one she said she'd only take when it's permanent. I stood there, heart pounding, trying to make sense of it. Then I grabbed my phone, shaky fingers scrolling until I found Willow's contact. She's gone. She left the papers. Half her stuff too. What the hell is going on? She replied instantly. Willow, Curtis. You need to check your bank account. Now. My stomach dropped. I logged in. At first, nothing looked strange, the numbers were there, the transactions recent. Until I checked the savings. The joint account. 0. I clicked the history. Transfer. 5 days ago. Same amount I'd been saving for the down payment on a second vehicle. Gone. Transferred to a personal checking account under her name, one I didn't recognize. I felt lightheaded. Then I checked our emergency savings. Gone too. I called the bank. Verified my identity. Asked them how this could have happened. They said the joint account rules allow either party full access unless specifically frozen. Which I had never done. Because why would I? Camille had been draining us in silence while sleeping next to me like nothing was wrong. And the worst part? It had worked. Flawlessly. Until the flowers. Until the wrong woman smiled first. Until I started paying attention. The house felt like a stranger's place now. Cold. Robbed of memory. The woman I had tried to win back with a stupid bouquet hadn't just given up on us, she'd prepared her exit like a con artist. Not a single trace of hesitation. Just, gone. And then, right as I was about to shut down for the night, a final message buzzed in. Unknown number. I know you found the papers. There's no need to drag this out. Let's keep it clean. No name. But I didn't need one. She was never afraid of me discovering her lies. She was just afraid I'd discover them before she had finished what she came to do. And I was beginning to suspect that what she came to do wasn't about love at all. I didn't sleep that night. I didn't even try. I sat on the living room floor with my back against the cold wall, the folder of divorce papers still open in front of me like some kind of threat. Every few minutes I'd stare at the signature, her signature, as if maybe I could will it to disappear. That familiar loop of her name suddenly looked like graffiti on a crime scene. Not elegant. Not human. Just final. But the thing that kept eating at me wasn't the money, or even the betrayal, it was how calm she had been through it all. Like this wasn't emotional for her. Like I had been a contract to fulfill, and she had just filed the final invoice. I couldn't explain that feeling until the next morning, when Willow sent me a voice message that made everything come into focus, and nearly made me throw up. It started simple. Her voice was low, shaky. Curtis. I've debated sending this all night. I recorded something a few weeks ago by accident. I wasn't snooping, I left my phone recording in Camille's kitchen while I went to the bathroom. She didn't know. And I hadn't listened to it until last night. But now, you need to hear this. I hit play. The first 20 seconds were nothing. Clinking glasses. Muffled sounds. Then Camille's voice, clear, sharp, amused. Camille. Look, Jonah, don't get all sentimental on me. You were always the endgame. Curtis was just the buffer. I told you this before we even moved in together. I needed someone stable to build credit, settle down, get me out of debt. He was, convenient. Safe. I paused the audio. My hands were shaking. Not from rage, from something worse. Realization. Horror. Humiliation. I played it again. She wasn't even hiding it. Her voice was so casual, so rehearsed, like she'd explained this strategy 100 times before. I let it play further. Camille, laughing. You think I was gonna spend my prime years struggling? Hell no. He offered security. You offer everything else. Why do you think I made him get that second job? Why do you think I never wanted kids? I needed his resources for our freedom. And now I've got it. That was when the air left my lungs. Not just the cheating. Not just the money. The entire marriage, the whole 11 years, had been a calculated maneuver. I wasn't even a placeholder. I was an ATM. A financial bridge. A useful idiot. I don't remember standing. Or yelling. Or throwing the coffee mug against the cabinet so hard it shattered. I just remember the shards, the sound, the buzzing in my head like a swarm of hornets screaming, "You let this happen." I'd always thought maybe I was the boring one. The background guy. Beige walls, like she said. Turns out, I was the blueprint. She had studied me, used me, built a life on me, just long enough to make her escape with someone else, with everything we'd built together. She'd drained the joint accounts like a thief walking calmly out of a vault. And I had held the door open for her the entire way. I messaged Willow. I need that audio. For real. Can you send it to me? She replied. Already did. Check your email. Also. I'm sorry. I should have warned you earlier. I didn't blame her. She didn't owe me anything. In fact, she was the only person who treated me like I mattered at all in this nightmare. With shaking fingers, I downloaded the file, attached it to an email, and sent it to my lawyer, the one I'd finally called that morning. I told him I needed to talk. Urgently. And then I did something I never thought I'd do. I called Camille. Not to beg. Not to scream. But to let her know I knew. She didn't answer. Sent me straight to voicemail. So I left one. Camille. I heard it. I know. Every word. You played your part well, I'll give you that. But you underestimated one thing. I'm not the idiot you married anymore. You're not just walking away clean. We're going to court. And I'm going to show them who you really are. I hung up. My hands were still shaking, but not from fear anymore. From clarity. And for the first time in years, I wasn't confused. I wasn't questioning my worth. I was angry, and finally ready to do something about it. The courtroom wasn't dramatic. There were no outbursts. No slamming fists or gasps from the gallery. It was quiet, sterile, methodical, almost insultingly calm, considering the storm Camille had dragged me through for over a decade. But the silence worked in my favor. My lawyer presented the evidence methodically, the drained accounts, the date-stamped transfers, the suspicious new checking account in her name, the photo of the signed divorce papers she left behind, and finally, the audio. We played it. In full. Camille didn't flinch, at least not on the outside. But her lawyer did. He leaned over to her midway through and whispered something. She didn't nod. Didn't shake her head. Just stared forward, lips pressed tight, like someone watching her empire slowly burn. Her strategy had been silence. Let the system split things down the middle. Walk away with half and rebuild her new life with Jonah. But the audio changed everything. The judge didn't care about adultery, this wasn't about infidelity. It was about intent. About fraud. She had siphoned funds from a joint account for personal use while planning an exit, one she deliberately concealed. That mattered. My lawyer asked for a financial forensic review of all transfers in the past 12 months. Camille's team tried to object. They were overruled. It was a small moment, legally. But to me, it felt massive. Because for once, I wasn't being dismissed. I mattered. 3 months later, the ruling came in. I retained full rights to the house. Camille was ordered to repay 60% of the drained savings, plus attorney fees. The judge called her conduct calculated and ethically dishonest. I never smiled in the courtroom. But inside, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Weightless. She didn't speak to me as she left. Just gathered her purse and walked out, sunglasses already on, as if none of it had touched her. But as she passed the hallway outside the building, she saw Willow waiting by the bench. They locked eyes for a moment. Willow didn't flinch. Camille turned her head and walked faster. Willow looked at me. So, that's it? I nodded. That's it. We got lunch that day. Nothing dramatic. No romantic confessions. Just food and quiet conversation. I told her I didn't know what came next, that I wasn't ready to jump into anything. And she said, "Good. That means you're finally putting yourself first." I went home alone that evening. To my house. My peace. No fake perfume in the air. No hidden plans on the table. Just the hum of the fridge and the echo of my own freedom settling into the walls. I planted flowers in the backyard the following week. The wild ones, like the ones I'd bought the day this all started. They weren't perfect. But they were mine. And I smiled when they bloomed. Thank you for watching Reddit Confessions. What moment from this story shocked you the most, the flowers, the voice recording, or the divorce folder on the table? Drop your thoughts in the comments, we read every one. And don't forget to subscribe for more real, raw, and unforgettable confessions. Until next time.